Hello everyone, my name is Shani Jones and this is KNKY, which stands for Know the New Kinky You. We are rounding out our 4-part series, and this is talking about some of the double standards when it comes to prostitution. Now, I'll remind you that I'm a certified sex coach through Sex Coach University, and my job in doing all this is to create a dialogue about all things that impact us as sexual beings, as humans, because as humans we are sexual beings. And as much as I love to talk about the clitoral stimulation and G-spots and anal play and oral sex and all of those great things, there are other aspects of sex that I would like to take the opportunity to talk to you about. So if you've been following the series, we've been talking about sex workers and the different things that come along with being in that industry. We've talked about prostitution versus being a victim of human sex trafficking. We've talked about different types of prostitution and the fact that in the United States it's only legal in Nevada and only in certain counties. We've talked about the different roles in executing prostitution. We've specifically highlighted the madam, which is the female pimp, and its correlation to Black heritage. And so now we're going to talk about some of the double standards that exist in prostitution. Now, if you think about being a prostitute, you already know that it can be a male, it can be a female, or a transgender. There is no ownership when it comes to sexual identity or sexual orientation in order to claim your stake as a prostitute, if you will. You can come from all walks of life, although there are some commonalities when it comes to typical background of prostitutes, especially at the streetwalker level. They tend to be from a more traumatizing type of background. Now, I think that we can kind of stipulate already that I don't think anybody grows up to say, hey, I want to be a prostitute. I don't think that happens. I'm not going to say never, but highly unlikely that that's the case. Most people that get into that business, they get into it because of circumstance. They need money. It's a very easy way to get it. It's something where you already have the tools to do it. You don't have to learn a trade. It is a trade that you've probably been practicing since you were a teenager, perhaps, or at least a young adult. So we have to understand that although illegal, it happens. We have to be willing to deal with the consequences of our actions and be willing to deal with the choices that we have to make. And that happens in every aspect of our lives. So I'm not singling prostitutes out. As people, we need to be very conscious of the decisions we make and be willing to deal with the consequences of those actions. So in this particular conversation, we're talking about double standards, especially with regard to prostitution. Now, we may be able to easily characterize, the prostitute over the pimp or the madam or the John, and, be able to rein in on those characteristics. But there are other things to consider when we're talking about a double standard. First, let's stipulate them. 9 times out of 10, when we're talking about prostitutes, we're usually thinking about a woman. But what happens when it's the woman who is in need of servicing? So I'm not sure if you watched this video, but anytime I think of it, I immediately go to Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. Now, the funny part of this movie was that beyond the fact that his services were only $10, he actually never slept with any of the women that he was being accused of being a prostitute for. He was able to find out what they really wanted and connect with them on a deeper level. And so typically when you're actually looking for a male escort, you're usually trying to associate them with very affluent women who just need a bit of arm candy. So these men play a role on behalf of their particular benefactor. Sometimes sex is involved and sometimes it isn't. And so if you actually try to Google male escort, what you'll find is that, one, you'll know that female escorts is much more prevalent, because even when you put in male escort, just because the fact that you have escort, you'll see links for females. It's not impossible, of course, because of the world we live in and the Internet of Things. You can find out anything. The world is a very small place in that regard. So although not difficult, like, it's not, I know Backpage doesn't exist anymore, but it's not Backpage and it's not Craigslist where you have this, although I'm sure you probably could find it. Not take that back, you probably could find it, male escorts on Craigslist. But the point is, it's not as easy as finding a female. So if you go in and do that Google search, you'll either find female services, gay male services, and if you happen upon a legitimate escort service for straight women by straight men, you'll see that what they're offering is really what we talked about before: companionship and undivided attention. Your most legitimate services will not offer sex as part of the package. But if we go back to our Deuce Bigalow reference, you know, perhaps sex isn't really what you're looking for. You're just looking for that person to pay you the attention that you deserve. And, you know, sometimes paying for it is the easiest way to get it. But then again, sex could be involved. So whatever floats your boat, and whatever the terms and conditions of your agreement are with that particular company. So that was the lighter note of our double standard scenario. So you know by now that I like to do my research, and some of my research is based off of documentaries and things that I find on the internet. So this next one is actually on Netflix, called Iraq's Secret Sex Trade. Now, prostitution in Iraq and most other Middle Eastern countries is illegal, and even sex before marriage is punishable by death. So I found this particular documentary very, somewhere between hard to watch and infuriating, because this video reveals how young girls and women are taken advantage of under the veils of religion. So a lot of women, not all women, little girls, you know, we dream of meeting our Prince Charming, and we want to get married and have the house and the kids, and we envision how our life is going to be, and we hope one day to have that manifest into reality. What this documentary showed, though, is that you have religious clerics who use their positions to help exploit children and promote prostitution. There was a common sentiment that as long as the girls were over 9, that you could be sexual with them. However, if they were virgins, that you couldn't penetrate vaginally. You could touch their bodies and you could penetrate anally, and you would have to work out with her whether it hurt or not, or there's any discomfort. But as long as you didn't have vaginal intercourse, It was all good, right? It would only become a problem if you actually did have vaginal intercourse with them, where then their family could force you to marry them because you've now taken their virginity. But even that's only a problem if they know who you are and where you are, how to find you. So the clerics talked about all of that. Like, you know, it's only a big deal if they know how to get to you. Now, what happens is the clerics get around prostitution by what is called a pleasure marriage. So, a pleasure marriage can last for an hour, a day, a week, a month. It doesn't matter. What it means is that you have a religious leader, a cleric, perform a ceremony that says that you are now a wife and husband for this predetermined amount of time. Now, this ceremony isn't like a formal wedding or anything like that. It can happen over the phone. They don't have to meet you. You don't have to have any questions. It's okay, I'm going to pay this person to perform this ceremony. Once the ceremony is done, you're now my wife. Under religious law, I can have sex with you with no consequence. At least no consequence for him, right? So sometimes there are formal contracts, most of the time not, because formal contracts lead back to the cleric, lead back to the husband, and provide some semblance of human rights for the woman. But those are not encouraged, right? What we find, or what we're finding, is that the women in the documentary, because of society, because of how women are viewed and how they're viewed as being less valuable once they've had sex, the only legitimate way for them to be able to do it at all is to be married at the time. And so, you know, and not even the pleasure marriage kind of gets you away from some of the stigma, because those women that are legitimately married know what a pleasure marriage is and knows that it's just a way of working around the system and being sanctioned by God to be able to have sex and not be looked down upon. But that's literally not the case, at least for the women. For the men, you know, they're determining, oh, I only want to be married for a day. I only want to be married for a month. The women have, not to say that they don't have any say in it, but, you know, again, they might be looking for a way to make money or a way to, you know, support their family, especially, you know, if you're a widow or something where you don't have a whole lot of options or choice. You know, this is your way to earn money. You know, there's no shame for the men. These services are performed in the open. It's commonplace and common practice. The religious clerics take a front row position in facilitating these services. I mean, to the point where if a man comes in with a woman, they're like, hey, I want to marry her. The cleric will perform the ceremony. You pay him, boom, you're done. And that marriage is for however long it's supposed to last. But if a man comes in and he says, hey, I want to get married, can you find me a wife? The cleric then becomes a pimp. He's already a pimp, but he becomes a pimp and like, okay, I'm going to find you a girl. And, you know, they'll talk age preferences because, again, remember, young girls are very, very coveted. They take that position of, I need to be able to take care of you and provide you the type of girl that you want. So they definitely become a pimp, and beyond just facilitating a ceremony. I encourage you to take a look at the documentary. You know, the women there are ostracized, condemned, and are possibly killed, where the men, they just walk around, you know, doing it because they can. It's interesting to see how, although sex is a very natural part of what it is that we do and who we are, the way that it is treated and looked at and talked about in different places around the world, you know, it's a high contrast to perhaps you as to who you are and what you're used to versus perhaps what somebody else is going through. So don't forget to subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like. Don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone else so that they can partake in these conversations. If you have comments, please leave a comment in the video below, and follow me across all social media. It's at DOYOUKNKY, and I will see you again very soon. Have a good one.